Usually, when you think about how we talk to people every single day, we're constantly wearing this, like, very specific kind of armor.
Oh, absolutely. The verbal armor.
Right, like we use sarcasm, we use detachment, we use these little verbal deflections just to get through the day.
It's comfortable.
Exactly. It keeps the stakes incredibly low.
Well, it's a highly effective defense mechanism, you know? I mean, if you never actually voice the specific thing you desire, you can never be rejected for it.
That makes total sense.
Yeah. You just maintain this baseline of safety.
But then you encounter a concept that basically demands you take that armor off.
Mm.
And suddenly that comfortable conversational landscape becomes, honestly, genuinely terrifying.
Oh, yeah, completely.
Because we are looking at a dynamic today where words aren't just sounds you make to pass the time. They become like actual forces of nature.
Right.
It is the absolute definition of high-stakes communication. And today, for you listening, we're doing a deep dive into two highly unique, deeply connected sources from April 28th, 2026.
And both of these were created by Tarot, by Heisey, right?
Yep, exactly. Both by Tarot, by Hayesi. And our mission today is to explore how dropping that shield of, shallow chatter and speaking around, our actual desires can act as a massive catalyst for change in our lives.
Because the interplay between these two specific pieces of source material, it provides this really fascinating framework for behavioral psychology.
It really does. We have an astrological forecast centered on this specific cosmic event called the Venus trine Pluto aspect.
Right.
But instead of just leaving it as an abstract concept, the second source takes that exact astrology and weaponizes it in a sci-fi short story.
It's called StoryScope, the gravity of loose talk.
Yes. And before we jump into the sci-fi adventure, we really need to understand the cosmic weather report that inspired it. So, okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
The source material makes this really specific claim that under a Venus trine Pluto aspect, words are magnetic.
Which is such a powerful phrase.
It is. But I want to break down the actual machinery of that because it's treated like a psychological formula.
It really is. What's fascinating here is the text makes a very structural claim. It doesn't just suggest being polite. It implies a literal gravitational pull created by how we speak.
Right. So in astrology, Venus represents our desires, right? Like our aesthetics, what we want, how we attract things.
Exactly. It's very surface level harmony.
Okay. And Pluto, on the other hand, is the planet of the underworld. It governs hidden truths, buried psychological trauma, power dynamics, radical transformation, heavy stuff.
Very heavy. And a trine is an astrological aspect where two planets are 120 degrees apart.
Which means what, exactly?
Well, it's considered a frictionless, harmonious angle. So putting those elements together creates a highly volatile psychological environment.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you're taking what looks good and what we superficially want, that's Venus, and providing a frictionless pipeline directly to what is deeply uncomfortably true, which is Pluto.
So the friction between our polite fictions and our actual reality just vanishes.
Exactly. The forecast asserts that when you drop the detachment, honest conversations can suddenly reveal hidden truths.
The way I visualize this, it's kind of like looking at our everyday, shallow chatter as elevator music.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Yeah, like it's there, it fills the silence, it keeps us from feeling awkward in a confined space, but it doesn't move you. It doesn't actually alter the physical environment.
Right, it's just background noise.
Exactly. But the communication the forecast is describing under this planetary alignment is like a booming, full orchestra symphony that physically rattles the windows in their frames.
You cannot ignore it.
No. It inevitably pulls your attention toward it.
And that's the psychological hook of the source material. It reveals the unnerving fact that someone might understand you a little too well.
Oh, that is incredibly unnerving. When someone looks right past the elevator music and hears the symphony you're trying to hide.
Because when someone understands you deeply, the illusion of your armor shatters. The forecast promises that this kind of radical honesty deepens intimacy. It enhances persuasive communication.
It actually commands the reader. It says, this is not the day for shallow chatter.
Right. It tells us to let curiosity lead, to say the interesting thing, pitch the bold idea, and my favorite part.
Flirt like an adult.
Yes.
Yeah.
Flirt like an adult.
That phrasing implies so much about our default state. Like, it suggests that most of the time we are flirting or just communicating our desires like terrified teenagers.
We hedge our bets.
And we leave ourselves an out. Always. So for you listening, ask yourself, are you asking better questions in your conversations, or are you just hiding behind detachment?
Well, and understanding the mechanics of that magnetism, in theory, is one thing. Watching it completely detonate a comfortable, static situation is another.
Which brings us to the sci-fi story.
Right, the companion story, the gravity of loose talk, it basically serves as a laboratory to test this psychological framework.
We get to see this dynamic weaponized in a high-stakes scenario. We're introduced to Captain Elia Voss and the crew of a transport ship called the Wayward Saint.
And they are drifting near these rusted docking rings at the edge of a trade moon.
The text beautifully describes it as hanging in a vacuum like the bones of old gods. It's so evocative. And the ship itself is barely held together by stubborn engineering and profanity.
Which perfectly matches the crew. The opening dialogue immediately establishes the baseline of their relationships. The crew is communicating purely through armor.
Oh, completely. The banter is razor sharp, but it's entirely defensive. Like Miri, the pilot, tells Jax he bluffs like a dying preacher.
And Jax fires back that she cheats like government policy.
Right. Tamsin, the mechanic, is just casually threatening to vent them all into the vacuum of space. It's the ultimate manifestation of shallow chatter disguised as tough, gritty smuggler talk.
They're communicating, but nothing of actual substance is being exchanged. Nothing is at risk. It is their version of the elevator music.
Yeah, and here's where it gets really interesting. Because the receiver crackles. A voice comes through, low and amused, saying, "Captain Voss, you're late."
And the holo flickers on.
Yes, and we meet Selene Vale. She's described as elegant as a blade. She's a broker, a thief, an occasional betrayer, and critically, possibly the only woman Elia has ever loved enough to mistrust professionally.
Such a great line, and Celine's entrance completely alters the physical space of the room. The text explicitly notes that she doesn't flirt with compliments. Instead, she flirts with dangerous truths.
Which Elia finds much worse than a compliment. But I have to ask, why? Like, isn't flirting supposed to be light and complimentary? Is a dangerous truth the ultimate example of what the forecast meant by flirting like an adult?
Well, think about it. A compliment is often just another form of shallow chatter.
True.
It's a pleasantry designed to make someone feel good without requiring vulnerability from either party. A dangerous truth, however, requires you to state a reality that might blow up in your face.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
It demands that the other person engage with the actual, unvarnished reality of a situation, not a polite fiction. When Celine's voice fills the room, the text says the atmosphere shifted. The conversation stopped being sound and became gravity.
There's the literal magnetism from the astrology forecast. She's pulling them into her orbit simply by refusing to engage in small talk.
Exactly. And she doesn't offer them standard heist payment. She tells them about a forgotten intelligence vault on a dead archive ship.
Right. And when Jax asks if there's treasure, Selene says, better. Ideas.
And Tamsin, leaning right back into her cynical armor, says, ideas don't pay.
But Selene looks right at Elia and replies, these might.
She is offering the raw material to build deeply nurtured dreams. This aligns perfectly with the astrological mandate to move forward with aspirations we've been sitting on for months.
So they take the bait, and this transition from the safety of their cramped, bickering ship into the dark, colossal, dormant archive vessel is incredible.
It's a fantastic setting.
The text describes it as dark as abandoned memory, with corridors humming with the ghosts of forgotten ambitions. The physical journey into this dead ship operates as a literal metaphor for the emotional journey Elia and Selene are navigating.
The architecture of the space completely reflects their internal psychological state. They're walking through a physical vault of encrypted secrets while simultaneously navigating the encrypted history of their own relationship.
That's such a good point.
I mean, every modern couple has an archive like this. A massive, silent vessel built out of unspoken resentments, things we were too afraid to say, arguments we avoided just to keep the peace.
Yeah, and they split off from the main crew to move through these dim corridors, and the tension is just suffocating. Selene asks if Elia is still angry, and Elia defensively replies, professionally.
So guarded.
So guarded. And Selene immediately calls her out on the armor. She says, you always did hide behind sarcasm when you wanted something. And Elia fires back, accusing Selene of talking like every sentence had a knife in it.
See, Elia is desperately clinging to her sarcasm, her shallow chatter, as a shield. And Selene, who is really acting as the Pluto energy in this dynamic, is actively stripping that shield away.
Right.
She tells Elia bluntly that words matter and that most people waste them.
Wait, I gotta stop you there, though. Because reading that specific scene, it felt incredibly manipulative to me.
Really? How so?
Well, Selene brings her ex to this dead, isolated ship, literally surrounds her with the ghosts of forgotten ambitions, and then leans in and asks, You ever wonder if what ruined us was never betrayal but cowardice?
Ah, I see what you mean.
Right. Like she is cornering Elia. She is using the environment to force an emotional concession. Isn't that just manipulation?
Well, it certainly has the structural mechanics of a trap. It's an ambush, no question. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to look at what Selene is actually extracting from Elia.
Okay.
She isn't extracting a favor, she's extracting a diagnosis. She is pointing out that their past failure wasn't due to an active malicious betrayal, but because of the words they were too terrified to say out loud.
Even so, timing that profound emotional confrontation when Elia is totally off balance, exploring a dangerous derelict ship, it feels predatory. It feels calculated to break Elia down.
Well, the darker side of the Pluto energy we discussed is that it is never polite.
Fair point.
It doesn't wait for a comfortable moment over coffee to unearth your trauma. The forecast demands radical honesty. And radical honesty often feels like an attack when you are entirely reliant on your armor.
Oh, that's true. It does feel like an attack.
And the text itself validates the necessity of the ambush. After Selene asks that heavy question about cowardice, Elia hates it. Not because it's a manipulation, but because of how accurately it lands.
Yeah, the narration actually states, because sometimes a sentence does not sound spoken. It sounds discovered.
And that is perhaps the most profound psychological insight in the entire source material.
It's a beautiful line.
A discovered sentence means the truth was already there, buried in the room, buried in their shared history. Selene didn't invent the thought to manipulate Elia, she just finally dug it out of the ground.
And the vault around them actually holds encrypted political blackmail, trade routes, rebel networks, decades of hidden dreams.
It's a brilliant narrative choice.
It really is, because the ship is literally constructed out of the things people were too afraid to say out loud. So this intensely personal breakthrough between the two women immediately triggers a collective, high-stakes breakthrough for the whole crew.
They finally reach the center of the vault.
Exactly. The core of the archive opens around this suspended engine of light. They find thousands of encoded prospect maps.
And the crew immediately recognizes the magnitude of what they found. Jax realizes this could buy them permanent freedom. Miri says it could start a revolution.
But Selene isn't looking at the data cores. She's watching Elia, and she issues a direct challenge, echoing the exact astrological mandate we discussed earlier. She says, "Pitch me something impossible."
Such a great moment.
Elia hesitates. But then she drops the sarcasm. She drops the armor entirely and says the interesting thing. She says, "A fleet outside government lanes, free ports, real independence."
This is the critical moment, the moment of moving from internal fantasy to external reality.
Right. So what does this all mean? To me, verbalizing a deeply hidden desire like that is exactly like punching coordinates into a ship's navigation system.
Oh, I love that.
Because before you say it out loud, your desire is just a daydream floating in your head. It has no mass. It demands nothing of you.
Right, it's safe.
Exactly. But the second those words leave your mouth and enter the physical space of a room, it stops being a daydream. It becomes a literal, trackable destination. It creates immediate accountability.
And accountability invites judgment, which is exactly why we resist doing it.
Yes.
When you hold on to a bold idea silently, you constantly prejudge it yourself. You convince yourself it's ridiculous just to protect yourself from the pain of failing to achieve it.
We all do that.
But when you finally speak it into a room with conviction, giving it that magnetic gravity, it fundamentally reshapes the reality of the people listening.
And the text confirms that exact shift.
Hmm.
When Elia pitches this massive, impossible idea of a free fleet, no one laughs. No one dismisses it as a smuggler's pipe dream. The narration notes that the room had changed. Quote, "Because bold ideas have a way of sounding ridiculous right before they sound inevitable."
The psychological weight of that inevitability is what changes the group dynamic. Jax, the former revolutionary, signs on. Miri signs on.
Even cynical Tamsin, the one who threatened to vent them into space an hour ago, she signs on.
Because the text explicitly says months of unspoken schemes suddenly had shape.
It says, funny thing about speaking desire aloud, sometimes it stops being fantasy, starts being navigation. It completely validates that coordinate metaphor.
It really does.
And it really begs the question for you listening to this right now. What is the impossible pitch in your own life? What is the bold idea, the career move, the relationship boundary that you have been too cowardly to say out loud?
It's a tough question.
Because as long as you keep it locked in your head, it's just a fantasy protecting you from failure.
We do have to acknowledge the fallout of that action, though. You cannot make massive, bold moves or speak undeniable truths without creating immediate friction. The universe tends to push back against radical change.
Oh, literally, the moment they have this cohesive realization
Uh-huh.
and claim their destiny, alarms start screaming. Raiders attack the ship.
Naturally.
The text dryly notes, "Nothing profound survives long without gunfire." And the corridors just erupt with blaster fire. I love Miri's dialogue during this sequence.
So good.
She's shouting over the comms, literally dodging lethal lasers, and yells, "Can we have one meaningful emotional breakthrough without armed pursuit?"
It provides this necessary levity, but it also grounds the high-concept sci-fi in a very relatable psychological reality. Altering the dynamic of a relationship or changing the trajectory of your life is almost never a peaceful process.
No, it's messy.
People and systems resist the new version of you. The moment you decide to pursue the impossible pitch, the obstacles immediately manifest.
So they're running for the docks with these stolen data cores, and the odds are terrible. Selene and Elia get pinned down behind a cargo barricade. And this is where the absolute absurdity of the astrology mandate reaches its peak.
It really is the climax of the whole concept.
They are hiding from lethal blaster bolts. And Selene laughs breathlessly and says, "You realize this is our best date?" Elia is staring at her, incredulous, asking, "Now?" And Selene simply says, "When else?"
See, Selene refuses to let the external chaos dictate their internal truth. Even under literal fire, she will not allow Elia to retreat back into the safety of shallow chatter.
She won't let her put the armor back on.
Exactly. She is forcing the Pluto energy to its absolute conclusion.
She leans in, plasma bolts are literally scorching the metal over their heads, and she demands, "Tell me something honest."
And Elia tries to deflect one last time.
Using the environment as an excuse, she says, "We are under fire." But Selene just replies, "Exactly." And then Elia finally exhales. She drops the very last piece of the armor. She admits it. She says, "I never stopped wanting you."
And Selene smiles with the calm of a woman who orchestrated the entire mission for precisely that answer. And she says, "There you are."
And she kisses her. As the text notes, like adults, under gunfire.
Which is incredible. And this raises an important question as they escape. Because the emotional truth of that moment hits so hard because it strips away all the spectacle.
Right. They escape through an ion storm, vanish into the black, and eventually regroup in the galley of the Wayward Saint. They're bruised, grinning, looking at stolen star maps that represent routes to futures no one had dared say aloud just a few hours prior.
And the toasts they make are so telling.
Jax toasts to reckless conversation. Miri toasts to dangerous women. But Elia looks at Selene and toasts to saying the bold thing.
And Selene leans in to deliver the final validation of the forecast. She says, "Told you words were magnetic."
The text notes that their banter curled warm and wicked, fulfilling the exact promise of the astrological source.
Right, a connection that starts with a spark and ends with rethinking your entire approach to the people you let into your orbit.
The narrative provides our ultimate takeaway here. It says, sometimes the biggest heist is not stealing treasure. It is talking honestly enough to change the course of a life.
That encapsulates the ultimate value of the Venus trine Pluto aspect perfectly. It's about enduring the intense friction required to strip away the cowardice and the sarcasm and revealing the raw, powerful truth underneath.
Yeah.
And as the story says, out there in the black, holding on to hope and honesty is rebellion enough.
It is just a stunning convergence of these two pieces of source material. We start with this abstract, cosmic, astrological mandate, the mechanics of how desires and hidden truths align to make our words magnetic.
Right.
And then we see the psychological reality of that brought to visceral life through Elia and Selene. By simply refusing to be cowards in their conversation, they literally changed the trajectory of their entire universe. They turned a stagnant daydream into a tangible rebellion.
But if we pull back and look at the entirety of what we've analyzed today, there is a lingering implication in the source material that we really need to consider.
Okay, what's that?
Well, we've spent this entire deep dive discussing the courage it takes to be the one speaking your hidden desires. We've explored the bravery required to drop your armor and pitch the impossible, but we haven't discussed the receiving end of that magnetism.
Wait, what do you mean the receiving end?
Think about it. If words truly are magnetic, like the astrology source claims, and if speaking your desires literally pulls those realities toward you with the force of gravity, are you actually prepared for what arrives?
Oh, wow.
Right. When you finally drop your armor, stop bluffing, and speak the dangerous truth, you become a massive gravitational center. Are you truly ready for the reality of what you might pull into your orbit?
I guess
Because once that gravity shifts and the
Hmm.
people around you start answering your honesty with their own, you cannot put those truths back in the vault.
That is a staggering realization.
Yeah.
We spend so much energy worrying about having the courage to turn off the elevator music, we rarely stop to ask if we are actually prepared to listen to the symphony. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you take these ideas, examine the architecture of your own unspoken words, and find the courage to say the interesting thing today. We'll see you next time.